I'm joined down the line by General Lord Richard Dannatt, former Chief of the General Staff. Richard, the Prime Minister yesterday for the first time saying the country needs to go onto a war footing. Whilst I accept that the international situation is not very good, isn't that slightly over the top?
Well, actually, Nigel, to be honest, I think that's slightly, dare I say it, misinterpreting what the Prime Minister said. What he really said was actually putting British industry onto a war footing. And that's what really matters, because actually it's British industry, along with American industry and German industry, that needs to produce rapidly the wherewithal that Ukraine needs to push back Russian aggression. So the extra £500 million that the Prime Minister announced yesterday is all going to Ukraine. Most of that actually will probably go into ammunition factories run by BAE Systems and others to produce the 155mm shells, the missiles and so on and so forth that Ukraine needs. So that's what he was really meaning as far as that was concerned.
OK. No, I take that point. Now, of course, we've been giving a lot of our artillery shells and other munitions to Ukraine, which leaves us ourselves very short. And I completely understand what you're saying about our industry needing to gear up. But, you know, I was asking yesterday why now, and I was perhaps cynically saying that it wasn't mentioned in the budget. Perhaps it was done for political reasons, but forget that. The question I want to ask you is, why not now? If we're going to increase spending from 2 to 2.5%, if the need to get our industry mobilised for greater production is as great as many think, why not just do it now?
Well, Nigel, I think in fairness again to the Prime Minister, actually it is now. The commitment is there to spend an extra £75 billion incrementally and increasingly between now and 2030. But the real inwardness of this, and many of us have been calling for raising our defence level of spending to 2.5%, maybe even to 3%. And in the budget, Jeremy Hunt said 2.5% when conditions allow. Well, actually, the dial has moved on now. The Prime Minister has said we are now committed to 2.5%, and we will find that extra 75 billion increasingly between now and 2030. So actually, that means the conversation for awkward people like me who believe we should be spending 3%. We're back 2.5% now, and the call now is to move beyond to 3% when conditions allow. And the other point that's really, well, several other points actually, we're telling our adversaries, particularly the Russians, don't kick us around, we're serious about this. But we're also saying to our allies, come on, Britain's showing leadership here. Some of you aren't even spending 2%, some are just over 2%. We're going to 2.5%. You just do your bit as well, because we want to keep the Americans in. And if we Europeans don't do our stuff, the Americans will sugar off.
Yeah, no, and Donald Trump has made that perfectly clear, and I think Joe Biden feels in the very same way. Many say that it's a very high probability that Keir Starmer will be the Prime Minister before the end of the year. How do you see the Labour position on defence spending going ahead? They've made positive noises, have they not?
They have. They've echoed Jeremy Hunt in the spring budget by saying 2.5% when conditions allow. But I'm afraid realpolitik is as it is, that actually, if they walk back now from a firm British government of today's position of increasing to 2.5%, 75 billion extra by 2030, they'll be pilloried for cutting defence. So I'm afraid Keir Starmer and John Healey have got no options. They've got to move up to 2.5%. They've got to match what the present government is saying. And I rather hinted a moment or two ago, the conversation then might move to 3%.
Right. Well, I can assure you, Lord Dannatt, that the overwhelming majority of viewers and listeners to GB News would back you on the 3%. I have absolutely no doubt about that. Keep campaigning. Thank you once again for joining us on the show. Thank you.